Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. Denver Chargers, Denver wins. Stidham's not the future. So my first takeaway on this, because we're going to talk about Cowboys and Lions and Justin Fields and Michigan, Alabama, Washington, Texas. But this is interesting. So I know Sean really well. I know Russell pretty well. I know Russell's agent through texting. I was a Russ fan forever. But I say this before, when new data surfaces, I have to reassess. So I got 3 coaches now that have moved off Russ and not for legends. Mike Glennon, Jarrett Stidham, and Geno Smith. So you have to reassess. But what's interesting about Denver, the contract situation aside, there's so much shit going on in this league. There's a lot of contract stuff. Fans have no idea. Obviously, Russell's side leaked it because they were ticked off, and I get it, and I support that. But here's the thing. You can solve a lot of issues quickly. If right now they're drafted about 13th, 14th, that's probably where Bo Nix is. Well, Bo Nix is Drew Brees with mobility. He completes 75% of his throws the last 2 years. Stidham slides into the backup role, and suddenly a lot of your problems are solved. You have a high completion, scheme up guy. I like Denver's roster. I know a lot of people look at this and think Sean Payton's in big trouble, but my take is they would give up some stuff. They got a couple 5s. I think they have a 1, no 2, a 3, a 4, 2 5s, a 7. I could see them. I don't think they want to move off Patrick Surtain, but I could see them doing it to get a second one, to get an edge rusher and a quarterback. But your takeaway on the Russ thing, the Sean Payton thing, I think every problem's solvable. I think if you go and get Bo Nix in that 12 to 15 spot, I think you're fine immediately.
I thought the reaction was laughable. Like, this is a billion-dollar business. If you don't like a player, you move on. Like, you ask guys to take pay cuts all the time. Their offense had been terrible. To me, it gets back to John Schneider wanted to short Russell Wilson in Josh Allen's draft. Remember, they wanted to trade him and draft Josh Allen. That they've been trying to get rid of him. One huge red flag for Russell Wilson in the history, in my life, the great quarterbacks, all the Hall of Fame guys, from Steve Young to Aikman, through Peyton to Brady, all their offensive coaches go on to get head coaching jobs. Aaron Rodgers, it's a pipeline to success.
Great call.
Russell's offensive coordinators have always been fired. They've always been fired. In Seattle, he went through a bunch. Obviously, so far, Nate Hackett was a disaster. Now, Sean Payton wanted to get rid of him in October. So you ask him to take a massive pay cut. He's not living up to it. In any business, if you have a $50 million asset that's giving you probably $15, $20 million worth of ROI, something it doesn't work. And they ask him, it's his prerogative to say no, and they can say, okay. Now, clearly, to me, they kept playing him. Probably the NFLPA would have came after him. It wasn't worth it, and they kind of, went out the string. We saw this happen last year with Derek Carr. These injuries, it happens all the time in football, right? And why? Yeah. And I always think this just in life, why do you want to be somewhere where people don't want you?
That's right.
If you're Russell Wilson, why would you even want to be there? Sean Payton doesn't want you. You move on. But, who's really going to want him? Because I think I heard you say this, and you've said it forever about the famous guys, the Tebows, the Cam. It's not easy to bring him in if he's not your lock starting quarterback. Some of these teams are going to be drafting quarterbacks. He's going to be in a weird space. It's going to get weird fast.
Yeah, I mean, Tebow, Cam Newton, you can't have them as backups. Russell's too good to be a backup, but you have to bring him in and build a franchise around him. And I think one of the things that I've had 2 different people in the league say he means well, but 2 people in the league have told me he can be difficult. You scheme stuff up, and this Sean Payton stuff work with Teddy Bridgewater, Taysom Hill, Drew Brees, and it doesn't work with Russ. By the way, I watched Stidham today. He's a backup. He's a spot starter. He's you can start him, but he's not a guy you're going to build around. And he made some throws down the field. God, Denver doesn't make throws down the field. And I know Sean Payton's looking at that thinking, that's what I want. And I contend that it was never going to work. Sean is a no BS, authentic, flawed, emotional being. Russell is relentlessly optimistic, highly religious. It's kind of a Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr on another level with HGH, like relentlessly optimistic. Like Derek Carr will swear And you've seen outbursts by Kirk, brief. Russell's just not happening. Also, Russell got young kids, beautiful wife, massive businesses. I'm not saying he's somewhat distracted. You don't know this. Young kids, I don't care if you're rich. There's just emotional stuff you got to deal with all the time. I got teenagers, older kids. It's easy street for me. They barely return my calls. Russ has a very broad, deep life. And I just think Sean Payton looks at him and just thinks, or stylistically doesn't work, personalities don't work, salary doesn't work. It's just the reality of big business.
Well, it turns out he's not a very good player in the pocket, and he could mask it forever with his great athleticism when he was younger and his great playmaking outside the pocket. Well, the moment that kind of died at the level in which it used to be, he no longer was close to the money he was getting paid, and two, he couldn't function in this offense. You still always have to be able to throw within the pocket. And that was always, it was hard for Pete and John. We all thought they were crazy because he looked so awesome when you watched him play, but they were right. That was always a major. He's small. It's hard to see, and he's not comfortable really playing like that. But it's like a NBA player, right? Who can't. Russell Westbrook. Well, he never could shoot, but when he was an elite athlete, didn't really matter. You get away with it. The moment your athleticism starts to dip and you're not a great shooter, your flaws get exposed really, really fast. And I think his flaws got exposed really, really fast, especially what does Sean Payton have? One of the more complicated offenses in the league, right? Same with Andy Reid. You got to be able to handle a lot. He was bitching and moaning about that 3 months ago, right?
Three months ago, he was talking about the armband. He said twice on record, we have to simplify the offense. That's not a good sign. That's trouble. I mean, there are times, I've heard this, Brandon Staley, his defense had so many checks and alerts that, I talked to somebody on that staff and they just said it was like Vic Fangio's defense is complicated. They thought Staley had a simpler version of Vic Fangio's defense. It was more complicated. That's why you slow the defense down. Offense is always complicated. And when I heard those sort of public comments, that's Sean basically saying, I want you guys to know what I'm going through. That's Sean protecting his face. But to watch the media, sometimes, the media is sourced and is informed, and most people I've worked with are smart. But Jesus, can the media be naive about business?
It was embarrassing.
It was like, really, guys, this is the way the sport works. I've done 12 negotiations. They can get pissy. And I have a big brand. I've had good bosses. We get along. We have cocktails. It gets pissy. They threaten, you pull back, you get angry. Like, this stuff is, Russell was ticked. It got leaked. This is the way the game works.
It's the NFL. Joe Montana was traded. Peyton Manning was cut. Bill Belichick told Tom Brady to kick rocks. Like, how's anyone shocked that this is going on? I don't get it. It's not like he's, going to be eating at McDonald's. He's still getting his money to be paid to go away. Like, Russell Wilson's fine, but he's just not as good of, he's an average player now who's being paid like an elite guy.